And I think everybody's connected, and Eric, our two guests, have already joined as well. So
All right.
I think we are good whenever the time is right.
Mr. Mayor, it is 7 p.m. Would you like to call the meeting to order? You're muted, sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. City of North Kansas City, Missouri, regular council meeting, June 2nd, 2020. All right, can you call a roll?
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Steffen,
Here.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Here.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Pearman,
Here.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Here.
Rick Stewart, would you lead us in the, the flag? Yeah, there we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Councilmember Pierce, can you verbalize?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Second. Councilmember Pierce, seconded by Councilmember Stewart. Can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item is comments from the public. We have two. The first is from Sean Galloway, Operations Manager at the Brookery. And it reads, this email is in regards to proposed CARES Act grants the city is considering on the June 2nd, 2020 council meeting. From what I understand, grants of up to $5,000 from North Kansas City business are being considered by the council. A grant of this manner would greatly help our business cope with the fallout from COVID-19. While we've been fortunate to maintain the majority of our retail presence, our wholesale operations have suffered greatly over the last 3 months. In March, we were down 35%, in April, 60%, and in May, 50%. We anticipate a loss in June, July, and August as well. We've taken out a PPP loan and are working toward the EIDL program. We've also invested $14,000 of our own funds in order to stay afloat and remain viable. A grant of $5,000 would help immensely with rent, utilities, inventory, and numerous other daily expenses. We really love being a part of the North Kansas City business community and all that comes along with it. A big part of why we feel this way is we feel the city listens and helps its businesses. We definitely need your help right now if we are to weather the rest of the year. Thank you for your consideration. And the second is on the River North letterhead, and it reads, Dear City Council members, Mayor Stilo, and members of city staff. I want to thank you for your consideration of the proposal before you tonight, in which over 50 of the independently owned restaurants, bars, retail shops, and personal service businesses of North Kansas City that have been affected by the coronavirus-related shutdown will be eligible to request assistance funds. This is a necessary puzzle piece that will help our small businesses greatly with some impossible circumstances that were thrown their way. I hope that, however, this proposal gets tailored in balancing both fairness and urgency, that there is room to consider even minor help to all who apply, regardless of their application's ranking, and that those who are able to are given ample time to get square with the city, county, and state on any factors that would otherwise make their request ineligible up front. I know this can't be an easy balance to strike, as the urgency level in releasing these funds is very high. But I appreciate all efforts from council members taking this balance as seriously as if it were their own business on the line. Thank you. Joe Gower, co-founder, River North District Business League. And that concludes comments from the public. The next item is the consent agenda, items 4 through 8. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Can somebody
Second.
verbalize?
Second.
So I heard Councilmember Farr, seconded by Councilmember Clevenger. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
yes,
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
And the consent agenda is approved. The next item is item 9.
Review of North Kansas City Destination Developers Community Improvement District fiscal year 2020 to 2021 budget.
Thank you. The state statute provides, when speaking of the administration of community improvement districts, no earlier than 80 days and no later than 90 days prior to the first day of each fiscal year, the board of the community improvement district shall submit to the governing body of the city a proposed annual budget to the governing body for review. Legal counsel for the community improvement district has submitted the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 annual budget for the North Kansas City Destination Developers Community Improvement District for council review. Staff has no comments to recommend. We do recommend that the governing body communicate to the CID board that it has reviewed the proposed budget and has no comment. If you do have any questions, the legal counsel, James Bergen of Polzanelli Law Firm, who submitted the budget, is on the line. Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Farr, seconded by Councilmember Pierce.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
yes,
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
8-0, motion carries. Number 10, CARES Act funding small business grants agreement with Clay County EDC, resolution number 20-038.
Thank you. At the City Council's last work session on May 19th, the City Council and staff discussed entering into a relationship with the Clay County Economic Development Council to administer a small business grant program. And so before the council is a memorandum of understanding with the Clay County EDC for your consideration. The main points of the memorandum of understanding, it does state that the city commits to making up to $100,000 in grants to qualifying North Kansas City businesses, that the EDC shall collect, calculate, evaluate, and verify the grant applications on a form approved by the North Kansas City governing body from North Kansas City small businesses commencing June 3rd through June 19th. The EDC will then present the city with information on the grant applicants and its recommendations for awards, grantees, and amounts as soon as practicable after the deadline for applications. Our anticipation would be that depending upon how many applications they receive and how long it takes to go through it, that when they indicate that they're ready to come to the city, that the city council might choose to have a special meeting because the next meeting after July 19th isn't until July 7th. So that's what we would assume you may wish to do. But we'll, after June 19th, then we would let you know as soon as something's ready. The governing body would then consider the recommendations of the EDC and indicate its acceptance of the EDC recommendations with or without modifications. After the decisions of the council, the EDC would then immediately send out letters to grant applicants regarding their acceptance or denial as soon as possible afterwards. And then the city would actually cut the checks and be responsible for the disbursement of funds to grantees as approved by the governing body. And in considerations of the services of the EDC, the city shall pay the EDC an amount equivalent to 5% of the amount of grant funds that are dispersed to North Kansas City businesses. So we are assuming that your desire there would be to have $100,000 available for grants and then an additional $5,000 as the EDC fee, for a total then for this grant program of $105,000. That concludes the staff report. Are there any questions? Councilmember Smith.
Two questions on that. First, the terms number 3 and 5 say as soon as is practicable. Would it be possible to put an actual hard timeline on that so that we don't accidentally end up dragging this out longer than it needs to be? This is pretty urgent stuff.
I think that's understood. I guess that TJ Berry of the Clay County EDC is on the line, and I might go ahead and ask him to be prepared to answer that. I do think to some degree it may depend upon how many applications they receive. But
sure.
TJ, would you like to speak to how quickly things can turn around after those couple of deadlines?
So it really depends on the amount of applications. Okay, each application is going to go through some significant analysis. When we originally started discussing proposals with the county and the cities within the county, we were looking at a revolving loan fund. And if you're not aware, the Clay County EDC, along with Midwest Small Business Finance, a sister organization of the EDC, has a revolving loan fund and is an SBA 504 lender. So we started looking at it from that perspective first, but then looking at the CARES Act. The CARES Act authorizes grants, not a revolving loan fund.
Right.
But much of the analysis, I think, is important for the city to be able to justify the grant, in that you don't want to give a grant to a company that at the end of 2019 really was on the rocks then, because you'll be giving money to a company that most likely won't survive after going through COVID. So it depends on how many applications.
Okay. With that, so we're looking at a timeline of June 3rd through the 19th for applications to come in. We're at a guess we're going to get front loaded with a lot of them. Can people be reviewing those starting when they first come in so that we're not waiting till the timeline ends? We're assigning rankings, and then at the end, we've got those ready to go.
Absolutely. That's our intent already. We've already staffed up. It hit at an absolute perfect time. We are ready to do this work.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember DeLong.
Hi, I got several. First couple I think are for TJ Berry here. Who will be doing the reviewing of these applications at the Clay County EDC?
There will be 3 people involved. Myself, along with Francis Sheffield, and Francis is our loan officer at Midwest Small Business Finance. And then our new employee, Reed Walbert, who is part of a tax accounting firm.
Okay. And so how many other cities are you doing this for right now, or plan on doing it for?
So we've presented to all of the cities, and we have another conversation, in-depth conversation with one additional city this Thursday.
Okay. And so tying those two back together then, so you do feel you do have the capacity to get this done with a quick turnaround though?
That is absolutely. But I mean,
okay,
if you look at the total number of companies in North Kansas City, and then you look at those who qualify, we've had a tough time getting around how many people are going to apply that qualify.
Yeah. And I would I would agree with what Jesse said. I mean, that's one of the things I had on my list. I don't like the verbiage as soon as practical. I don't like leaving the window open. I mean, I do like a hard deadline to try to get this done as soon as possible. But I guess that's not necessarily for you. That'd be more for, I guess it'd be all of us really, because it's a contract between all of us over whether or not we think that language can be changed to something that creates a hard date.
If you have a wording change to suggest, and if it's amenable with the Clay County EDC, then it can be changed.
I mean, did you have a date, Jesse, by chance? I mean, I didn't. I
No,
mean,
I
I
haven't specific. TJ, do we have any estimates? You said you couldn't get your arms fully around, but any idea how many we might see apply?
50 to 80.
If we hit 80, what's the longest it might take, assuming that we're able to get moving as the timeline progresses?
If we got the full 80, it's probably going to take an additional 2 weeks after the close date. If we get closer to the 50, we will be, especially if they come in quickly. If they start coming in tomorrow and they have all the information that we need, we can start processing that immediately. So there's a little bit of variables, guys, that I don't know to give you a good answer. I know that it is our intent to be on top of this. It's our intent to get it to you as fast as possible, because we are probably uniquely understand the need. We have been involved with the PPP and the EIDL, and we've talked to an awful lot of small business owners.
So kind of following up on what I said then, so you'll be in full communication with city management then, the second the application closed, how many applications you got, how many you've already been able to do, and maybe get a deadline or some sort of at least idea on closing night, how much longer it's going to be, and be able to give us some sort of update.
Yes, we can do that. Absolutely.
Okay. This one's not for you. This would be more back to council. I'm curious if there's any appetite to up the amount to 125 or 150. We talked about it before. Just try to squeeze a few more businesses in here while we can. I mean, I don't know what other ideas we have to use this money on right now. And I'd rather see businesses be eligible.
I apologize, sir.
No, go ahead. Yeah, no.
Okay. Oh, so I see Councilmember Pierce and then Councilmember Pierman asking to be recognized.
Okay, I was going to talk about something else, but to ask Brian, and then I do want to ask a couple questions. What are you saying? 150 what? 150,000?
Yeah, 125, 150,000. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Going from our 100,000 to 125 to 150. I mean, that's kind of my.
Okay, I absolutely agree with that. But do I have to continue to talk about that, or can I talk about a couple of things that I had in regard to questions brought up by Jesse and Brian? Although Valerie,
that'll give me time to collect on the rest of the stuff.
Well, can I say one thing on that topic, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Councilmember Pierce? So originally we had talked about doing several rounds of this, right? 2 or 3, depending on the timeline. So I think what Councilmember DeLong is suggesting, which makes sense to me, is that sort of we front load some of those funds. So there's more funds available maybe in the first round where people are hurting maybe the most. And then maybe we reduce, if we need to, the second or third round, however that works out based on time. And I'm on board with that. I would be fine with 150. I would go straight to 150. And then, then we have the rest of the funds to divvy out in the later rounds.
Councilmember Pierce.
And again, I agree with that, because there's a finite amount of time that you can expend this money. So beyond that, I have just a couple of concerns. The first thing is that the CDC was looking at originally revolving loan funds. These are not revolving loan funds. These are grants. I write grants for a living. The 3 people who are on this committee, I don't hear one grant writer person who's included in making these decisions, and it's concerning to me. I understand the financial aspect of it. I'm not being disrespectful, but there should be somebody on this committee who actually, this is a grant, not a loan, 2 different kinds of things. And the grants are very restrictive in what they need to be. And I think having not a grant writer, someone with experience on this is going to slow the whole thing down. I'm not saying we need to rush to judgment on this. We do need to get this money out as quickly as possible. Just kind of freaked me out a little bit on the revolving loan fund thing to begin with, and then moving forward to grants. The number of applicants, I kind of question. I actually had sent Eric an email, which is neither here nor there, on how many would be able under the restrictions that we have under eligible businesses. And then I reached out to actually our North Kansas City business community, and it was not nearly the number that you're suggesting that would be under the first section of this, eligible businesses include. So it's probably going to be fewer than 50 to 60 grants. I can't guarantee that. I mean, many people can apply, but you know, the goal is to, whatever committee you have looking at this, to eliminate those as quickly as possible that are not eligible. And if you don't have an actual grant person on board in regard to that, that's a concern to me. You need to add somebody to your committee who looks at grants, not loans and money kinds of things.
I think Councilmember Smith and then Councilmember DeLong.
So I was going to wait till 11 to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of how the approvals are going to happen. Should we hold for that, Eric, or you want to go?
I would suggest that you wait until that item. Yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good.
Councilmember
I
DeLong.
think this may kind of fall into that, but I believe it's also part of this agreement. Are they returning these to us in increments of $5,000, or an amount between $0 and $5,000 is the amount recommended?
An amount between $0 and $5,000. They can allocate.
Okay.
They can recommend any amount up to $5,000.
Okay, and this might actually be for the next item as well. Yeah, the application is part of the next. Okay, yeah, then I'll hold on the rest.
Councilmember Pierce. You're on mute, ma'am. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I question why there was like an amount. Different businesses are suffering kinds of different things. Again, sorry, I keep saying I'm a grant writer, but when I request money, because I'm a very small agency, I know that I can request a smaller amount than like Salvation Army, because the people I can attend to and my needs are less than that. I question why there wasn't some sort of a, 5,000 to 8,000 or some sort of a range, which could easily, under so far what you've shared with us, could be justified. I don't know why it has to be a straight 5,000. It doesn't make any sense to me, business-wise or otherwise. When you're talking granting funds, never have I wrote a grant where it says you can ask for this exact amount of money. You have to justify why you want it, and there's always a range.
Well, the $5,000 ceiling, if it was the direction of the council, we can amend the application form to make clear it's up to $5,000. If you would like to amend the verbiage, when we get to that item, we can talk about that. Are there any other questions or comments from council members? Would somebody like to make a motion?
So would I do a substitute motion or do an amendment motion if we want to do more money on this round?
You could make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with the change that the amount that the city commits to would be $150,000.
Okay, so I'll move to approve, make sure I'm on the right number here, resolution number 20038 with an amended amount of funding of $150,000.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong, seconded by Councilmember Smith.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce. Councilmember Pierce, you're muted.
Still muted.
You're still muted. Now you're unmuted.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
8-0, motion passes. Number 11, CARES Act funding, small business grants, approval of guidelines and application.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the Assistant City Administrator, Kim Nakahota.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In the previous agenda item, the City Council considered a memorandum of understanding with the Clay County EDC to administer a North Kansas City CARES Small Business Grant Program. The NKC program was developed using lessons learned from the first round of CARES funding, best practices, as well as lessons learned from the Alt-CAP COVID Business Loan Program here in the KC Metro, as well as several other small business grant programs around the nation. The application, information sheet, and recommendation form are presented for City Council approval. The main points of the program are as follows. This program will issue, now it's $150,000 in grant funds to small businesses in North Kansas City. Small businesses can apply for a grant up to $5,000 to reimburse business expenses related to COVID-19. CARES Small Business Grant applications will be accepted from June 3rd to 19th, 2020. Eligible businesses include businesses physically located in North Kansas City. Businesses must have had a valid 2019 business license. And just a quick note on this requirement. We're requiring last year's business license to ensure the business was in good standing in 2019. The global pandemic struck the U.S. during our 2020 business license renewal period. As the City Council may recall, we actually extended the 2020 business license period to give businesses more time to complete the renewal process. Public-facing businesses directly impacted by the stay-at-home order, such as retail, food service, arts and entertainment, hospitality, fitness, and personal services. Businesses do not qualify if they are a national franchise, a nonprofit organization, business or individual whose primary revenue is generated from rental properties, businesses with current liens or fees owed to the City of North Kansas City. Priority will be given to businesses that have 20 or fewer full-time equivalent employees and businesses that have 2.5 million or less in annual revenue. Businesses that have not received any federal COVID-19 federal relief funding, i.e. payroll protection program, small business disaster funding, etc., as well as businesses or other food and beverage establishments that did not have a drive-through window or offer curbside or delivery services before March 2020. Eligible uses of funds. Grants can be used for expenses incurred from March 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2020. Expenses can include, but are not limited to, payroll, provided that the federal funds have not already been received for this purpose, rent, mortgage, mortgage interest, utilities, inventory replacement, and COVID-19 supplies. Grant funds may also be used to purchase necessary protective equipment for employees and customers for exterior, interior cleaning needed to keep facilities sanitized. Grant funds may not be used for repayment of any federal or state programs related to COVID relief funding. It's important to note that CARES funding expenditures will be audited by both the county and the state. Expenditures may also be audited by the federal government. On a monthly basis, the city is required to report CARES funding expenditures to Clay County. The county will post these reports on their transparency portal for public access and will use these documents as part of their CARES fund audit. As with any publicly funded program, all applications and expenditures will become public record. With this in mind, 2 years of personal and business tax returns and 3 months of personal and business bank statements directly to the Clay County EDC. The Clay County EDC will use these documents to analyze and verify the business's income and expenses. This financial review is similar to the process performed by the city's financial advisor as a third-party expert. The EDC will review the application information and financial statements to make a recommendation for or against grant funding using the attached checklist that was provided as part of this agenda. The application and checklist with a recommendation will be presented to the City Council for its review. The financial information submitted to the EDC for verification and analysis will not be included in the information packet presented to the City Council. The City Council will ultimately decide who receives CARES grant funding. Staff recommends approval of the guidelines, application form, and recommendation form for the North Kansas City Small Business Grant Program. Should the City Council take action tonight, information and applications will be available on the city's website early tomorrow. The Clay County EDC is prepared to begin receiving applications tomorrow. And as mentioned earlier, TJ Berry from the Clay County EDC is in attendance should you have any questions about the review process.
Does that complete your staff report, Kim?
It sure does.
Okay. I see Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember DeLong, and then Councilmember Pierce.
Okay, a few things. First off, I'm looking at the timeline. We laid out 2 weeks to give everybody a chance to get things in. And I probably should have brought this up on the last point, but on the calendar, if we could stop the applications on the 14th, that gives 11 or 12 days to get applications in. Sunday the 14th, that would allow the EDC to kickstart review or get into full review on the 15th and have a quicker turnaround. That's still nearly 2 weeks of time. Would that be a possibility or something the council would be? This is a long time. We're given 17 days. Every day matters here. So that's something to throw out there. Second thing, it mentions any federal funding will lower the priority. So if they've taken EIDL or PPP, I would like to distinguish between the two because EIDL funds were for business. PPP protected the employees, but not the business itself. So I think we should strike PPP acceptance funds from the application. That's not to help the business survive. That's to help the employees continue to be paid if the business is allowed to, or able to survive.
So can I real quick just chat on that one?
Sure.
So I think that we could ask and maybe make that visible on the checklist. The challenge is you can't, as from our understanding right now, you can't use one part of CARES funding to help pay off another part of the CARES funding. Does that make sense?
Certainly, but we're going to be hard up to check if they're actually using one to pay off the other either way, because this is not supposed to go toward things like paying that off. This is supposed to go to utilities, rent, business supplies, and it's really at that point moving numbers around a spreadsheet because the money becomes a pool. I just think the PPP dropping their priority is unfair because it's not to help their business survive. We can say like, don't use it to pay off your paycheck protection loan, but they wouldn't even cross uses. So that would be my take on that one. Next thing, so the requirements sound good. 2 years of tax returns, 2 years of business tax returns. The 3 months of personal tax and business statements. So that would be March, April, May. I would also like to see an inclusion of 3 years from year prior. So we get a year over year comparison between the two. Primarily because if we're looking at last year's business, we're looking at the full year. March includes Snake Saturday, which is the biggest day for North Kansas City businesses. So if we see the impact of March of like what they had March 19th, April 19, and May 19 versus March, April, May of 2020, that could paint a very different picture than we're looking at year over year by just, comparing those two. I think that could show really what the impact has been, and without a whole lot more document. I guess 3 more things, 3 business bank statements. And then TJ might be able to answer this one. So I know that we're working with some loan staff on this, and I get that, like they know financial analysis. I'm a former loan file reviewer, so I recognize these acceptable, substandard, doubtful loss, special mention. Those are all loan classifications. They mean something to me because that was my profession for a decade. But at the council level, if I saw substandard, I'm probably not going to pass that. If we could change this to a letter grading system, for example, A, B, C, D, F, rather than using loan review language, I think that gives us a better chance as a council to understand what we're looking at as a grade rather than as a loan rating. TJ, would that be possible to switch up how we're reporting that out?
I'll just jump in real quick. We created the form, so we can certainly change that.
Yeah, I'd prefer to see a letter grade or some kind of qualitative value rather than a loan grading system that doesn't mean much to people outside of the banking industry. Those are my points.
TJ, okay. Can I come just back to if you don't mind, real quick, and then I know that Councilmember DeLong is next, and then Councilmember Pierce. So those will be the next two people to speak. But on your point about 3 months, can you just it would tell us exactly how you'd like to change the form, or if there's something that you wanted to add that would help?
Yeah. So under the required documents, the top of the application form, there's 3 months of personal and bank statements. And then, so you could say 3 months of personal and business bank statements, and then like right in the months, March, April, May, 2020, and then 3 months, March, April, May, 2019.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. And Councilmember DeLong.
Sorry, regathering what I had here. From Councilmember Smith's question about the date. I guess this would be towards Mr. Berry, but that be possible to move that date? I know we just agreed to another date in the last item, but I mean, how would that impact you guys? I mean, what's important to me, we're going to come up on another round of rent being due again soon, and some more expenses piling up. I mean, even if we could just get, like he said, just get that little bit of extra time, I think it could make a difference for some of these businesses. I mean, how would that affect you guys?
Mr.
I
Barry?
think that's fine, council member. You can change the date. It's just getting all the requirements for the loan application, the grant application. Some people take a little longer to put that together than others. So that's a concern I would have for your businesses, but it's perfectly fine as far as the Clay County EDC is concerned.
Okay, and I definitely, I mean, and you guys know a lot more about the EIDL grant, and I mean, there's a couple aspects of the EIDL. One part was a grant that was supposed to be up front that, has changed several times and been a sliding scale, and the other part, I believe, was a loan. I mean, so it would be, I don't know, I think beneficial.
It is layered, council member.
Yes.
Many businesses you will find take a PPP, which is 75% for payroll, 25% can be spent on utilities and rent. Then you have your EIDL. Your EIDL 10,000 is forgivable, but if you have also taken a PPP, the 10,000 generally is not forgivable.
Yeah.
Okay, it depends on a lot of variables. So then the EIDL is calculated based upon gross profit of the previous year. There are a lot of calculations that go into the EIDL also. There were 17 different grant loan applications for EIDL in the process. So the federal government has still been doing a lot of figuring out how this will work.
Yeah, everyone's still trying to figure out how it works. It seems like, and then once you get it, we keep changing the goalpost on everyone. So how would, under this current proposal, how would something like if you had a PPP loan, how would that be weighted? I mean, how significant is that to kind of the final determination?
That is dependent upon you and the council. If you want to discount the PPP, that's not a problem for us and our calculations.
And
That's up to you.
I mentioned it before, and I kind of agree, Councilmember Smith, and not at least making that a severe penalty for a business. Okay, then a couple other questions I had. So the grant application itself doesn't actually have a grant amount that they're requesting, I don't think, unless I'm just glancing over it. So is it assumed they're all asking for $5,000, or is it just, hey, we need money and how much will you give us?
It's really assumed that they're going to ask for the maximum. To getting to $5,000 worth of expenses and damages isn't going to be hard at all.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if maybe there's business that have made it through, but maybe more so what they want, you know, some of that additional PPP, some of those additional things to go forward with and say, hey, this would be helpful to make sure we're going forward. Okay, so that was just kind of my line of thinking on that. And then I will step away for a minute if someone else has any questions there.
Councilmember Pierce.
I agree with the June 15th. I think that's a good idea. We need to move this forward, and I don't see what a couple more days are going to do. I also agree with the PPP. Perhaps, you know, those who are getting that funding, I don't really know how my agency's getting the PPP. It's just all about salary. I don't know how other businesses are doing it. If they're doing it with salary and other allowable expenses. So perhaps I kind of like to just eliminate that whole PPP thing if it's not illegal to do so. Also, Jesse, I'm not by no means a financial expert, but I don't understand loan grading. So, you know, you need to make it simple. I don't think a whole lot of people who we represent understand all those kinds of things either. So the easier we can make this to understand, the better. And I'm just really kind of curious on the priority list. Is one thing going to be more prioritized than another? I'm wondering about the weighing of, because there's like 4 items. You know, is it going to be equally prioritized? That's a problem with the priority list. What's going to weigh more than another? I know that makes this thing a whole lot more complicated. But I'm just asking, since you guys are going to be the ones who are going to be making recommendations to us, how is it going to be weighted? How is this going to be weighted in regard to a priority list?
Well, there are so many variables, Councilwoman, and so much information that you're going to actually be analyzing to come up with that answer, because you're going to be looking at financials. That's why you request it. You're going to be really gatekeeping, because if you've got more than 20 employees, if you've got more than 2.5 million in sales, there will be people that apply that don't meet those. So you're going to have to go through all of those specifications to get to that eligible pool, and then step work right through the whole thing. I know that that's not a complete answer for you, but I would put more specification on people that have not received any kind of help so far, if there are any people that are that way. And I know that there are. We talk to them. That'll be the first thing that will be on the top of our list.
Great. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So thank you for that. And I still think we need to really pay attention to the PPP and how businesses who apply are using those monies, because that needs to be weighed as well. So thank you.
Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember DeLong.
TJ, so your loan review staff is going to be doing this. I'm guessing you're going to be developing some kind of a scoring matrix or a scorecard that's going to spit a number out that'll fit into each of these categories. Is that what you've got in mind to make this work?
That was our intent when this was a revolving loan. Okay. Right. Now that it is a grant, and a grant is totally different. So we are going to have to be looking at need, and we're going to have to be looking at impact. Both of those things will go into it. So yes, we are going to be grading based upon those as a priority along with the full analysis.
Okay. What would be extremely helpful is that if you're putting together a grading card, like a scorecard where you have different things that weight and you end up with a number at the bottom, say a 90 or better corresponds to acceptable, your highest grade. If we could get that scorecard rather than all the backup financials or anything like that, just the scorecard for each business that spits out a number at the bottom. So we see on a scale of 0 to 100, this is where they landed, and the basics, just the basic idea of how you got there, because then we can agree or disagree with how much you weighted the PPP or the EIDL. We can agree or disagree with how much you weighted their financial impact or the need. But it would give us a really good comparison across all the businesses to say, okay, this one got a 90, this one got an 86. These make sense or they don't. Is that something that you could present to us?
Absolutely. It's something we could present to you.
Thank you.
Councilmember DeLong.
Well, probably several people could answer this, but I'll go with Kim. Can you just go over a little bit about the open records and how that applies to this and their tax records and all this documentation they're going to be submitting?
So just as the city uses a separate financial expert for many of the development agreements, we use a separate third party so that those financial records are not part of the public realm. So when Matt Webster comes forward and gives you his formal recommendation, either this will work or will not work, he has done that financial analysis for the city, and that is kept with him, those financial records. Like I said, what we're trying to do is thread a needle here a little bit of making sure that we are being good stewards of the CARES funding, that the financial analysis is being done, but we are using the Clay County EDC to perform that task, so that the last thing we want to do is have those businesses' records part of the public realm, meaning sunshine lawable.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just wanted to make sure, that was out there and clear, just so everyone knows what's going on with that. And then I just want to, as you see, Mr. Barry, we're very passionate about this and want to get it right the first time and don't want to go, keep changing the program and mess this up. So I definitely want to express my appreciation to the EDC for taking on this program and doing this, to be a big help for our small businesses. So thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Councilmember Smith.
The last thing, so under the assumption, and I'm not certain it's an accurate assumption that everyone's going to ask for 5,000. It could be. Most often when there's money on the table, everyone asks for as much as they can and then accepts what they get. But I'm curious how that's going to factor in. So say you've done your analysis and you think this business should get 3,000. Would we get a scorecard and then a 3,000 at the bottom, which is then our decision up or down, yes or no on that? Or would we have the wherewithal to say, we think they should get 5, we think they should get 2? Can we change that? I'm a little concerned with how we're going to end up at the right number for each business if they're not even asking for anything specific.
Well, Councilmember Smith, you can change when you get the recommendations, you can change them any way you like.
Okay.
Councilmember Pierce, and then Councilmember Pearman, I think. I'm going to go ahead and call on Councilmember Pearman while we get Councilmember Pierce back.
Oh.
I was just going to ask, can we, I hear what you guys are saying about the form, and I butted you out there, Councilmember Pierce.
I went black for whatever reason.
I was wondering, should we just be adding a line to the form that says here, how much are you applying for? Is that, because that would help. If I don't know if I'm going to be in the process to review them, but if I was to review them after the EDC, then it would help me to know kind of what they asked for, what the committee recommended, and then be able to make a decision. So that's, from what you guys are saying, that's what I think, is that we just add something to that form or that application. And just to go back to what a couple people were saying earlier, I'm fine with the timeline of the 15th. So if that's where this is going, I'm fine with that timeline.
Just real quick, this is Kim. I've heard the date 14th and 15th. Which date are we going with? If I could get that consensus.
I would say cut
Councilmember
off
Smith.
midnight at Sunday, the 14th. So that Monday is when they can start with, they'll have the whole application pool.
Yes.
So we'll say 11:59 on June
There you
14th.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Is there somebody, another council member has a question or comment? All right. I'm going to take the, yes, sir, Mr. Barry.
Sorry, I apologize. Just wanting to make sure that everything is correct, and I'm looking at the original information sheet. How we reached the amount that the EDC is charging the city was based upon what independent lenders are doing for the PPP and the EIDL. And it was based upon a 5% allowable charge that the SBA was doing. What we have in there was $5,000 was the charge for $100,000 worth of grants. So putting forward that probably should be changed in accordance with the 5% rule, but that's up to you.
Mr. Barry, I think the so you would like to change the 5%? Is that what I'm?
No, it's
that's what the MOU says. The MOU actually says 5%. So
correct, but what's in front of the council people is, I don't think says that.
You're saying 5% of 150, not the 5% of 100.
Yeah.
That's what our document says. So you just wanted to
7,500.
reflect the new number.
Yes, I don't want there to be any surprise for council. I want it to be clear. One of the goals that we really set up was this needs to be transparent for your businesses. It needs to be transparent for the council people so that there is no politics in this. This is helping the businesses in the community weather this horrible, horrible storm and get through it.
Unless you're saying you can do it for less than 5%. Okay, thank you.
That's a going rate, Bryant. That's a going rate for grants. Yeah, that's going rate.
You gotta try.
Yeah. Item 7 in the contract does say 5%. If we're changing the top to 150, it should flow right through.
Right. After the council is done with this agenda item, I would like to take it back to the previous agenda item to reflect the changes that you may be making here at this moment. In other words, to the date and stuff. So if I may, if there's no others, if I can recap, and see if I have this right, and then if I do, somebody might make a motion. A motion to approve the various forms before you with these following changes: that the June 19th date will be changed to June 14th at 11:59 p.m. That payroll protection program will be removed as a weighting factor in the priority will be given to section. That when we ask for 3 months of financial records, we will make it clear that we are asking for 3 months, March, April, May of both 2020 and 2019. That the grading system that was listed will be changed to a simple A, B, C, D, F grading scale, and that a line will be added to the form indicating the amount of the request from the grantee. And it looks like Councilmember Smith may have something else.
Yeah, Eric, you hit it all on the head, except for the, and that was my original say, is the ABCDF. Rather than that, just getting that scorecard from the EDC with the number at the bottom that spits out their grade.
Yeah,
all right, then just because I want to make sure we get it right, I'm going to go through it again, if you don't mind. Did anybody have a question or anything before?
I'm just saying, we already talked to the 150, so you're not including that. That's right. You're considering that for the previous.
we're going to go back to the MOU after
Okay.
this item, with your permission. All right, so this motion, a motion that one of you might consider making then would be that the date of June 19th be changed to June 14th at 11:59 p.m., that the payroll protection program be delisted as an eligibility priority or as a priority factor, that 3 months of data from both March, April, and May of 2020 and 2019 will be requested, and that the CCEDC, the Clay County EDC, will provide the scorecard to council that they use to make their recommendations, and then an additional line will be added to the form asking grantees to indicate the amount of their request.
All right, Crystal, did you get that? Is Crystal on? Is this official?
So would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
Yeah. Okay. If she's got it, I will move to approve what Eric said, approving moving June 19th to June 14th to 11:59 as a close date. PPP removed is being weighted, asking for an additional 3 months of data, March, April, May of 2019, in addition to what we already asked 2020, requesting the EDC grade the system, change the grading system to an ABCDF grading system, and a line be added to the amount on the application form.
Not the ABCD system.
Right.
Not that. Minus what that part.
So I think
We got the gist.
staff has it. Yeah, the important thing is that we need to be able to make these changes after
And
the
I
meeting
move that be
tonight.
approved
And
there.
okay, so is there a second?
Second.
So I think that was Councilmember Pearman that I heard. So there's a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
8-0, motion carries.
All right, with your permission, I'd like to take you back to item 10, or rather, yes, item 10, which was the memorandum of understanding, and ask if somebody would like to make a motion to approve it with the change to June 14th at 11:59 p.m. and with the change that the city will commit to making up to $150,000 in grants.
Okay. I will move to approve to change the closing date from June 19th to June 14th at 11:59 and change the amount of the grants up to 150,000. But okay, that's the motion. We'll go with that. There you go.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the CARES Act funding agreement, MOU with the Clay County EDC. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
8-0, motion carries.
TJ, thank you very much for being here with us tonight. We appreciate it, and city staff will be back in touch with you first thing tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, the next
Okay.
item is item 12.
Ordinance, parking lot, patios, sidewalk dining, parklet, patio seating, bill number 7510, ordinance number 9307.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the Community Development Director, Sarah Copeland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As our North Kansas City businesses continue reopening, they are subject to lowered occupancy thresholds based on the Clay County Health Department's reopening plan. And we have been evaluating ways to assist our local businesses in using outdoor spaces to support their business operations. And the result of that is 2 new programs. I'm going to really have in total 3 parts. I'm going to discuss them in the order that they're presented in the staff report memo tonight. First is parking lot patios, which are actually not the subject of the ordinance here. For businesses that have their own off-street parking lots, we would propose to provide an expedited site plan review that would allow a business to convert a portion of their parking lot into outdoor patio space. Site plan review is an administrative review, and so it does not have to go before the Planning Commission or the City Council. We would work closely with the liquor control staff to streamline the application process for businesses. However, I would like to point out that the parking lot patio program would have a relationship to the next item on your agenda. Under the terms of the zoning ordinance, all businesses except those in the downtown C2 zoning district are required to provide on-site parking. Staff can reduce the amount of parking required up to 10%. Anything above 10% and up to 25% has to be approved by the Planning Commission. So the next item on your agenda, which would allow some flexibility to that requirement, would allow us to expedite the parking lot patio program for businesses that have their own parking lots. The ordinance that's before you with this item concerns sidewalk dining and temporary parklet licenses that would be of greater benefit for businesses, particularly downtown, that do not have their own parking lots. The ordinance before you proposes expanding the existing sidewalk dining license area. It's one of the 2 main things it does, to be allowed throughout the city. Currently, sidewalk dining licenses are permitted only on Armour Road and Swift in our downtown area. So this would eliminate that geographic restriction and allow sidewalk dining throughout the city, as long as a business was able to maintain a 4-foot wide paved area on the sidewalk for pedestrians to pass. And that would be the real limiting factor on where a business could get one of these sidewalk dining licenses. The main part of this ordinance is to create a temporary parklet license program, which would provide the ability to convert on-street parking spaces to uses such as curbside patio space. The temporary parklet license would be very similar to our existing sidewalk dining program, have similar requirements for the use of the space and the application process. One of the some of the regulations on the use of the temporary parklet space would include prohibiting extending power cords across the sidewalks or obstructing pedestrian access and blocking fire hydrants. Licensees would be required to secure umbrellas if they were provided. They would need to provide for trash disposal, and they would need to prevent the removal of alcoholic beverages from the parklet area, but alcoholic beverages could be served in these parklet areas. Licensees would be able to operate in a temporary parklet area from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and would be able to store furniture in the parklet overnight. Based on our conversations with River North businesses, we expect that most businesses that might take advantage of this would be food and beverage oriented, but the ordinance is written generally to permit other types of businesses that might benefit from expanded outdoor space to do so. And all businesses that want to obtain a temporary parklet license would need to provide us with the certificate of insurance, naming the city as an additional insured, which is also a requirement of the sidewalk dining license. And again, community development and liquor control staff would be working closely to streamline this application process for businesses, and to work with municipal services on marking these areas so that it's clear which are subject to a temporary parklet license and where that space is located. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have about this.
I see Councilmember Clevenger, and then Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember Pierce.
I have a quick question about the parklets. Sarah, would that affect any of the diagonal parking downtown? And how would that work as far as?
It would be available for any on-street parking space. So yes, it would be possible for someone to do this in the diagonal parking on Armour Road.
Thank you.
If you allow it, it's up to the city.
Exactly.
Right. and Councilmember Smith.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for bringing this forward. This is a very exciting, I think, a great opportunity for our businesses. Just being outdoors, getting able to spread people out. This is huge. I think all these parking spots are fair game. The ones along Armour, the diagonals downtown, that's fine. It happens in cities around the world where people are out. There's a bustle to the street. It's a wonderful feel. Sarah, about the power cord piece. So I understand the tripping hazard that can result, but I'm wondering, we're going to possibly need to have some lights over these areas or some kind of, I'm not exactly sure, but could they extend an extension cord using one of the step guards that channels things through? You see them at events. I believe restaurants in New York use them when they set out across the sidewalk.
Staff would not recommend that. We don't know how long this space might be used. It's called temporary, but that temporary could be for a while if the emergency order that limits occupancy is in place for a while. And so we would not recommend extending anything across the sidewalk because it is not only a trip hazard, but also a potential accessibility problem.
Even with the ones, you know what I'm talking about, the step guards.
I know what you're talking about, but staff would not recommend it.
So how would we handle, say that they did have a section that needed some lighting? Would it just be, you got to shut down when the sun goes down kind of thing?
Or they would need to look into something that is battery powered or could similarly run without extension cords being strung across the sidewalk.
Okay.
Councilmember Pierce.
Two things. One, do we have any idea what the increase in capacity would be, given the areas that may or may not be considered for this? I mean, it might be too early to ask that question, Sarah.
No, it would depend very much on how businesses decided to set up the space. So I don't know that we could really give you a good answer to that. I would also point out that businesses would be able to license different sizes of area. The way we wrote it is to restrict them to, like, for example, in downtown, the parking space is immediately adjacent to the business premises. So like a Screenland Armour, there are more parking spaces immediately adjacent to the front of their business than, say, the Fast, Healthy, Fresh that's right next door. It's just a smaller storefront. And so it's just too difficult to answer that question.
Okay, I understand that. And then there'd also be the spacing thing. The other question I have is in places that are open, we're already doing this, the smoking issue. I mean, generally you can smoke outside in any of these sorts of venues. If this is increased capacity, allowing people who can't be inside, who may or may not be smokers, is there going to be any restrictions in regard to smoking in these outdoor venues because of the increased capacity?
No, we would leave that up to the individual businesses, but our smoking ordinance does not prohibit smoking on the public street.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. I knew I'd be asked that question.
Councilmember Stefan and then Councilmember Smith.
I'd like to do things like this to help the businesses, but setting up places on the street, I think, are just a little on the dangerous side.
Your point is taken, sir. We did, probably worth pointing out, we have, subject to council approval tonight, ordered some barriers, which we believe are CARES eligible funds. Since this is related to we're doing this because of the COVID crisis. They're bright yellow. They're sort of the barrier, the barriers that you see when, like, for parades and things. And we would be putting those out to very brightly delineate the areas. So this is something that we would provide to the businesses that do elect to do this in order to make it as very clear that these spaces are not available.
Well, all right, but once it gets dark And there might be some individuals that have partaken in adult beverages. I think that's just a little on the dangerous side. I'd be, if it was somewhere close right next to them, but not on the public street, on where there's diagonal parking. That's my opinion of it.
All right, sir. Councilmember Smith.
To quickly respond on that one, Fred, this is extremely common around the world. I mean, these sidewalk cafes, the parts where you put them onto the parking areas right off the street, like it's a very, very common thing, and not a danger per se. It's not something you hear about, injuries, that kind of thing. My question is, can we overlay this with with something that points out the business needs to be adhering to the guidelines by the Clay County Health Department for them to be approved for this this special license, this parklet license? Because I don't think, if they're already not following health guidelines, that we should be allowing them extra privileges.
If you wished to add something like that to the ordinance, then you could do that. Yes, sir. We'd like to try to figure out where that is before you make a motion and have a vote. So I think I saw Councilmember Stefan and then Councilmember Pierce.
I'm just replying to the statement of, like, in New York. I've been to New York, and I spent a summer in London. I don't recall. There was some parking, but it wasn't a street like that in London. I mean, in London, you got streets that cars can't go through because the streets were built before the car was invented. But that's just my position on it. I just think this is too dangerous.
Councilmember Pierce and then Councilmember Clevenger.
Okay, 2 points. One, Eric, have you already talked to the police and fire department in regard to extending these into the parking spaces? And in regard to Councilmember Stefan's question, have you talked to them about safety issues? And I have one more comment.
Sarah and or Kim, could you comment on that question? Have we had those discussions?
I have not had this discussion with police or fire. I don't know if Kim has had any discussions with them.
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think if you do have that discussion, it would probably alleviate any of the concerns that were expressed by Councilmember Stefan. And then in regard to Councilmember Smith's comment in regard to if they violate, I already spoke about the only way that they should be allowed is if they're already within the compliance of the health department. And if they have already been found in violation, and I'm not sure anybody in Yorktown has, then that might be an exclusionary clause for them to apply for this. But it should certainly, and I would assume that would already be the case, in order for them to conduct business in the street as inside their establishments, they'd have to abide by the Clay County Health Code. So I don't really think that's a big issue. If they've already violated, it's an issue. Otherwise, I don't think we need to add another layer to it. Or if they do violate, we could remove their permission to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to take the liberty of agreeing with Councilmember Pierce on this, that if they're not in compliance, then Clay County could simply shut them down, and that would shut them down altogether. Councilmember Clevenger.
Couple of questions. First of all, since this is temporary, if or when we get back to 100%, does this stop the parklet? And
yes.
the extra provisions? Yes. Okay. Question number 2, and that was what Rita asked, if we had discussions with our police and fire. Not sure that it would be an issue, but I would definitely, like to hear that. I mean, I guess we're going to vote on it tonight anyway, but definitely, want to make sure we get a good answer from them.
All right. Well, I will ask Chief Freeman or Chief Hargis. And I am sorry that we didn't have that discussion with them, but since they are now hearing it, Kevin or Dave, do you have any comments about this? Kevin?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to make a comment on it because I hadn't really studied this prior to the meeting. So I would share a little bit of Councilmember Steffen's concern about in the parking spaces. And I would like to see how the plan is to cordon that off, because it only takes one car out of control. And we have seen that on occasion, and that's worst case scenario in the Armour Road area, and careening off cars and the like. So it's not optimal in my opinion, but I don't necessarily want to make a full opinion comment on it right now, but without having fully studied the ordinance.
And I'm going to ask Chief Hargis to make any comment, and then I'll call on Councilmember Stewart. Okay.
Like Chief Freeman, I haven't had a chance to look at the distances or how it's going to be cordoned off for the rest of the street, and without seeing the details of the plan, I'm really not prepared to make a statement for or against at this time. But anytime you place people in the area where there's cars, there is some type of concern. But like I said, without seeing all the distances and how it's going to be set up, I'm not prepared to make a statement for or against at this time.
So I will just say, before I call on Councilmember Stewart and then Councilmember Smith, that we were moving very quickly to craft this ordinance, and that may have been an oversight on our part not to have those discussions with police and fire. So I acknowledge that. Councilmember Stewart. You're muted. You're muted, Rick.
There we go. I've been watching Rita too much.
Thanks.
I've been to Europe. I've lived in the Middle East. I've been to the Far East. I love how they do the outdoor stuff, but I have to admit, I've never seen it in the street. They have sidewalk cafes. They may have a street blocked. They do that in Spain a lot. But just to have people sitting and dining and that close to traffic, I've never seen that in Europe, Middle East, or the Far East. I mean, I love the sidewalk thing and getting people outdoors. But I think, and you may have to ask Mr. Barzee, is when you approve something that's not normal and somebody gets hurt, there's been cases where fire marshals, since that's what I was for a while, would approve like a nightclub when it's not kosher and it burns, and the city gets sued along with fire marshal. But anyway, I think to me it's just too dangerous to have the seating in the diagonal of parking. Especially if there's room on the sidewalk, or even if there's not, it's to me, it's kind of dangerous, but love the outdoor stuff.
Councilmember Smith.
And this is, again, it's kind of on the spot since we haven't had the discussion with fire and police, but is there a distance from the traffic lane into the parking space, say 2, 3, 4 feet, that would be considered safe versus not, as assuming we're barricading it off, that sort of thing? Is there a distance so that we're not just stuck with the sidewalk and then still having to leave 4 feet for pedestrian access? That severely limits what we can do with it.
Sorry, do you have a comment? If not,
I thought that was a question. I thought that was a question for police and fire.
It's to anybody who can opine.
I know that the city of San Francisco recommends a 3-foot setback from the edges of on-street parklets in their program, partly for that reason, just to move everyone into that space further away from vehicles. But I don't know if there's science or engineering behind that.
Chief Freeman, were you about to comment?
The only thing I was going to say to that, and no, I'm not familiar with a specific unit of measurement that would be safer than one or the other, but I think those sight lines are going to change depending on the parking. And if cars are parked there, but the pedestrians in the parklets will be protected. If cars aren't parked there, they're less protected. So it can change from minute to minute, hour to hour, as far as how people can see those as they're approaching them.
Councilmember Pierce.
I suggest that since we haven't looked into the police and fire departments recommendations in regard to this, and we have also not looked into what the increased capacity would be if we do allow for this to happen. I love the idea of eating outside. I like all of that, but I want to do it safely. So I think that we need to check with both the chief of the fire and the police department and have them look into it in a sensible way. And we need to also consider how many more, what the capacity would be, and when we weigh all those issues. I'm suggesting we table this particular item until the next time the council meets, till we have a lot more information.
I would just say there's no way for us to answer the capacity question, because it would depend on how many parking spaces someone decided to operate in. And so what that total square footage would be of area. So I just don't think we're going to be able to answer that part of your question.
Okay, then I still defer to checking on public safety.
Mayor Stilo and then Councilmember Smith. You're muted, Mayor Stilo. You're on mute.
I think what we're trying to do is to help the business out kind of right now. I would recommend that we take out that parking or that seating on the diagonal and let them go ahead with the patios and the parking lots and then on the sidewalk. So let's get that going. We can look at the parking on eating on the street later on, but we need to move this forward for now and get them as much help as we can. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Well, that's literally exactly what I was going to say. So,
and I agree.
Yeah, let's get it going. I don't table the whole thing, but table the on-street diagonal until fire and police can opine, can measure, get whatever data we need. And then if it's safe, we can increase the capacity out, but let's at least get them on the sidewalks and the parking lots and anywhere else they can be safely. And question on that, are we really just talking about Armour, that corridor down Armour, or is Swift's, I'm thinking the Brookery or Hogjaw or something like that, where they would have some on street that's in a much less busy part of town? Would we allow for that? So we would just have them look at Armour, or is it all on street that we want to hold off on?
Sarah?
The ordinance is written to allow this in any on-street parking space.
Including Swift?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, can we just strike the Armour part pending further look and then revisit it?
Just do the.
Well, if I may, Councilmember DeLong.
I was just going to ask, Kansas City recently passed something like this, didn't they?
Yes.
Something similar.
Do we know if they had any sort of setback requirement on theirs?
I do not know.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Stephan.
Yes, if we just delete this on street eating, I'm good with the rest of it. But I want to make sure that that on street eating is deleted before I vote.
So Sarah, if I may,
that would be section 4.
All right, so thank you. That's where I was going. So if the council which desires, it could remove the temporary parklet license, section 4 of the ordinance, and adopt the rest. And that sounds like it might accomplish what the council is comfortable with.
Are we gonna come back?
And then we can, yes, sir, we can come back with some more information for you at your next meeting to see about considering this again. So would somebody like to make a motion?
First reading.
So if I understand the motion, it is to adopt the ordinance with the deletion of section 4.
Correct.
Second.
I'm going to say Councilmember Clevenger seconded.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance amending chapter 4.30 sidewalk eating and alcohol consumption licenses of the code of the city of North Kansas City, Missouri by modifying sections 4.30.010 and 4.30.080. And then should I read the rest of it, Eric, or do we leave that off? The creating a new section 4.30.085 establishing temporary parklet license.
No.
Yeah, I would change the heading. Effect, yes.
Just remove that part, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we done?
Yeah,
Are we to item
I move-
13? Oh, sorry.
No, we need you to have the second reading.
I move
Thank
that bill number 7510 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9307.
Second.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
An ordinance amending chapter 4.30 sidewalk eating and alcohol consumption licenses of the code of the city of North Kansas City, Missouri by modifying sections 4.30.010 and 4.30.080. Number 13, temporary emergency powers, city business regulations during COVID-19 emergency. Bill number 7511, ordinance number 9308.
Thank you. So during your discussion of the previous agenda item, Sarah alluded to some situations in which you might find allowing staff some temporary administrative approval authority, staff and the mayor, excuse me, the city administrator and the mayor together, some temporary administrative authority. The measures that were discussed in that last agenda item did move forward to council very quickly, and we do anticipate that as we work through implementation, that questions or situations may come up that demand quick resolution that you might rather did not have to wait for either city council or planning commission approval. To allow for nimbleness in dealing with those kinds of issues during the temporary period, we are suggesting passage of an ordinance that would give the mayor and city administrator the temporary emergency authority to waive, modify, or suspend the operation of requirements established by city ordinance, policy, rule, or regulation related to procedures for conducting business in the city, including, but not limited to, the issuance of various licenses and permits. The ordinance before you would find it determined it's in the best interest of the city and its citizens and businesses to temporarily relax the enforcement of certain ordinances, policies, and procedures, and where appropriate, to authorize the temporary enactment of new guidelines to allow businesses to reopen and serve as many customers as may be authorized by the directors of the Clay County Director of Public Health. The mayor and the city administrator would have to jointly approve each one of these waivers, modifications, suspensions, etc. So if it's is your pleasure, we do have that for your consideration. Are there any questions? Councilmember Stefan?
Why does this have to be jointly approved? it seems to me that it would be reasonable just to have the approval of the mayor.
Staff would have no objection to that change. We just thought it might, we would just ensure, I'm sure that the mayor would not approve something like this unless staff suggested it to him. So we would be fine with that modification. Councilmember Smith? Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, sorry, my computer connection was bad. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I absolutely want to keep the joint approval in there. I think that's very important for checks and balances.
Councilmember DeLong?
All right, so it seems like what we had kind of early on, sometimes some communication, some feedback issues on some of these type of things. So I can't approve anything like this unless the public's notified and city council's notified less than 24 hours after any sort of waiver, modification, or suspension happens on any ordinance, rule, or policy. I mean, it's got to be in the document that there's going to be a public announcement on every single action that happens and a notification to city council.
We get staff is comfortable with doing that. Councilmember Pierce?
I thought this was all about particularly moving businesses forward and making those kinds of decisions. Of course, I'm happy to be notified if I'm still in the council, and I think it's important to have transparency. I think that maybe Council Member DeLong's comments are related to other kinds of issues. I'm comfortable with having the city administrator and the mayor make these decisions, but I'm also open to opening up to the public. I just do not think it would be necessary to have to discuss or have special sessions for every single thing that the city's going to need to talk about in regard to moving our businesses forward. And that's what I thought this whole particular point was. So if it's about every single thing the city does, then that would be different. But the way I read this, it's kind of part and parcel of moving our businesses forward. And I think that anything else would delay that process.
So I think I saw Councilmember Stefan asking to be recognized, and then Councilmember DeLong.
Yes, I just think it would be the responsibility of the mayor as far as checks and balances go. Usually you have, the way I've always understood checks and balances, it's elected people, not appointed people. You know, you have checks and balances between in the government, the legislature, and judicial branch, but those are elected, they're not appointed. And I think this is a responsibility, sole responsibility of the chief administrator of the city, which is the mayor. And that's my position.
Councilmember DeLong.
No, my point is, you know, we're the governing body. That's our role. You know, you have these rules and regulations. When they get waived, when we see that responsibility, there's also a mutual responsibility that we know what's happening. Not we're blindsided, not that we don't know what's going on. You know, it's we are ceding this response. So I would think that council would want some sort of, you know, balance on that end too, just to make sure that we're being completely notified of everything happening. Like,
Councilmember Clevenger.
I'm in agreement. I like the joint with city administrator and the mayor. I do kind of understand Bryant's take on getting informed. I'd definitely be open to being informed. You know, definitely want to move things along for businesses and streamline it. Give the authority with the caveat that we are informed of any deviances or whatever that you've approved.
So as I said, certainly staff has no issue. Staff has no issue with reporting to you any relaxing that occurs. If you wish to make an amendment to the ordinance, then we would ask that you be specific in your wording on any motion.
Okay.
Councilmember DeLong.
I guess we're ready. Sorry, I was trying to actually pull up the. Okay, so I would call for a first reading with an amendment, and I don't know where you even put this in the document, that notification be issued to City Council within 24 hours of any implementation of this.
Councilmember, well, I saw Councilmember Stefan asking to be recognized. So if I might, before the second, yes, sir, Councilmember Stefan.
I was just going to second his amendment.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'm going to ask the city councilor, Mr. Barzee. The motion's been made a little informally. Would you have an issue with staff crafting putting the intent into the ordinance before it's presented to the mayor for signature? Do you have an opinion on that?
But the proper way to do it would be a motion and a second to amend, and that be voted on just to whether or not you're going to amend it. And that's not the first and second reading. That's just a motion to amend this ordinance to provide for whatever you want to specifically put in there, a second on that, and then there's an up or down vote on that, and then you vote on the ordinance as amended if it passes.
Okay.
So, Councilmember DeLong, would
that was
would you
okay.
like,
So
like to make a substitute motion?
Yeah, so I guess I would be making a substitute motion to amend the ordinance to include a notification policy to inform the city council within 24 hours of any action.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Pierce seconds. City Clerk, can you please call the roll on that amendment, proposed amendment to the ordinance?
Yes, and just to make sure I have it correct, it is an amendment to the ordinance for notification to be issued to the council within 24 hours of any action. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes.
8-0, the amendment passes.
Is there now a motion to pass the ordinance as amended?
First reading.
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes.
An ordinance granting certain emergency powers related to procedures for conducting business in the city during the health and safety emergency, COVID-19, to the mayor and the city administrator.
I move the bill number 7511 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9308.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes.
An ordinance granting certain emergency powers related to procedures for conducting business in the city during the health and safety emergency, COVID-19, to the mayor and the city administrator. Number 14, CARES grants for emergency assistance for individuals and families.
Thank you. At the City Council work session on May 19th, the City Council, in addition to talking about small business grants, indicated that it wished to designate $15,000 of CARES funding for emergency financial assistance to individuals and families directly impacted by a loss of income due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And staff recommended that the city work with the social services agency to use that organization as the administrator of such funds for the benefit of North Kansas City grantees. At this time, since we had not had a discussion about a specific agency before, I did want to ask the city's council permission to enter in negotiations for a memorandum of understanding with the Northland Assistance Center for this purpose. Councilmember Pierce.
I want to abstain from voting on this particular issue. I am the executive director of Northland Assistance Center, but if it's appropriate, I would field questions, but I'm abstaining otherwise.
Are there any other council members have any questions or comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Abstain.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
Item 15, award of contract, owner's representative for water treatment plant renovation project, resolution number 20-036.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the Public Works Director, Pat Hopper.
Thank you. Good evening. Advertisement for bid will be published tomorrow for the water treatment plant and water supply wells renovation project. Before construction begins, it's essential that the city hires a project representative to oversee and monitor the work of the contractor and to be a liaison between the contractor, city staff, and the project engineer. This person will facilitate communication and coordination between all parties throughout the construction phase, which is expected to last 1.5 to 2 years. It is estimated the owner's project representative will need to be on site between 20 and 30 hours each week. Requests for qualifications for the selection of the owner's project representative were published in October of 2019. Not only did we publish, we also contacted 12 engineering companies to make sure that we had plenty of submittals. Burns and McDonnell is, but only 2 submitted, and that's Burns and McDonnell and C1 Energy Solutions. Burns and McDonnell is the design engineer for the project, and staff believes there's a potential for conflict of interest in having the design engineer as the project's owner representative for the project. So the city would be better served to have a third-party entity perform this function. So following the review of qualifications of Jerry Charlton, who is the owner and sole employee of C1 Energy Solutions, the city administrator and I interviewed him for a position. Staff determined that Mr. Charlton has the qualifications and experience to serve as the owner's project representative. Mr. Charlton and the selection committee discussed and agreed upon a proposed hourly rate of $90 an hour, which is based upon 1% of the estimated project cost, working 25 hours a week. Staff considers this a reasonable hourly rate for the work and recommends approval of the agreement hiring Jerry Charlton of C1 Energy Solutions to serve as the project's representative. If there's any question, I'd be glad to answer them.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
8-0, resolution passes. Number 16, budget amendment, city council room sound system, resolution number 20-037.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the IT manager, Stephen Roberts.
Good evening. As outlined in the memo, the audio system in the council chambers is failing and needs to be fixed. It's already required repair 3 times in the past 12 months. And my concern that is if we keep patching this together, it's going to fail either just before a council meeting or even worse during a council meeting. If that happens, we won't have any live or recorded audio until we can replace the system. So as this was not a budgeted item, I'm asking for the council approval for a budget amendment in the amount of $8,500 to replace the DSP rather than to continue to repair it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman.
I'm still here.
Sorry, I got out of line.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Number 17, second amendment to agreement with YMCA, bill number 7509, ordinance number 9306.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the city councilor, Tom Barzee.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I know this has been a relatively long City Council meeting. I'll make, I believe, relatively short. As you recall, you've entered into an option basically to sell the former White Castle property. In order for the Gallery Lofts project to move forward, it's always been discussed that you would sell off a small strip of land from the easternmost part of what I'll call the community center property up to the fire lane. And in as much as you've entered into an operating agreement with the YMCA, that operating agreement spells out in it the property that they are operating for the city, which in fact includes this strip. So the second amendment to our operating agreement with the YMCA takes this strip and it removes it from the property so that we can then legitimately sell it. It removes it from the property that is being operated, if you would, by the YMCA. This is at no cost to the city. The YMCA was happy to sign that strip back over to the city, but that would allow us in the coming weeks to go ahead and close on this property and to sell it without there being any kind of an encumbrance on it whatsoever. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's an ordinance technically. First reading.
Oh, first.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
An ordinance approving and adopting second amendment addenda to facility operating and cooperative agreement by and between the city of North Kansas City, Missouri and the Young Men's Christian Association of Greater Kansas City.
I move the bill number 7509 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9306.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
An ordinance approving and adopting second amendment addenda to facility operating and cooperative agreement by and between the city of North Kansas City, Missouri and the Young Men's Christian Association of Greater Kansas City. Number 18, adoption of the 2020 multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. Resolution number 20-034.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the fire chief, Dave Hargis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What I have before you tonight is the 2020 Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. FEMA requires the region to come up with a hazard mitigation plan and update it every 5 years. We have participated with other cities and counties and school districts in the region to put this together. Basically, it's something we do every 5 years. It's updated, and it's part of our FEMA requirements with emergency management. If you'd have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
8-0, motion passes. Number 19, approving accounts due and payable by the city through May 29th, 2020. Bill number 7508, ordinance number 9305.
First reading.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through May 29th, 2020.
I move the bill number 7508 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9305.
Second.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through May 29th, 2020.
Thank you. The next item, number 20, is staff comments. We have a couple of reports in your packet. Upcoming city items of note: YMCA monthly financial report from April 2020. Other than that, staff has no comments. So we will move on to council member comments, and I'll begin with Council Member Stewart.
Yes, I don't know for sure if Fred or Valerie are going to be at the next meeting or not. If you're not, I want to say goodbye to you tonight, and I've enjoyed serving with you both. Even when we disagreed, I always respected you, and I thank you for your service to the city. That's all I have.
Just real quick before I call on Council Member Stefan. So the procedure at the next meeting will be that the council, which is seated tonight, will begin the council meeting on the 16th, approve the minutes that are presented for this meeting, approve the ordinance certifying the election, and at that point, the oath of office will be administered to the new council members, and the newly elected council will be seated and begin considering the agenda items. So council members Stefan and Pearman are expected at the beginning of the June 16th meeting.
I'll take all that back then.
And I'll call on council member Stefan.
It's been a long journey, very long journey. I thought about writing up a speech. Just hope I don't want to take too long, but 42 years, 42 years. That's a long time. And when it started, there's been so many changes. Even before I came here, I was a deputy sheriff in Iowa. I was in military police. And we got exposed to different issues. But North Kansas City was a very good place to be employed. I know they had problems with up in the Iowa situation where, like every other month, we either had a grand jury investigation or the FBI civil rights investigation. I wanted to leave there, which I did. And I'm very grateful. It sounds so trite. Yeah, you know, it's an honor to serve, but it really has been. And I've enjoyed myself. And there's been a big transition between first retirement and my second retirement. The first 32 years was with the police department. And now it's, you know, I really don't seem to put in as many hours in the last 10 years that I've been with on the city council. I'll just put it that way. There have been so many changes. Seeing things from the late 60s up until now. But that's all. And we have problems today that just keep evolving. I just want to say thank you. I really appreciated being able to serve. And it has been an honor and a pleasure. Most of the time. There's been a little up and down. So I'm going to sign off.
Valerie and Fred, good luck on the next trailhead you take. Hopefully it'll be an adventurous one. Maybe not as rocky or maybe as rocky as this one, who knows? But at least it'll be pleasurable. Eric, I have a question for you. Our trash people came by today and they're throwing everything in one truck. Is that normal? All the recyclables, all the trash are going in one truck.
Let us check into that, and we'll get back to you, sir.
Okay, because I sat there and watched them do it, and I didn't know if that's going to be the new realm, because if that's it, then why do we have a recycle bin? But that's all I have.
And Councilmember DeLong.
Yeah, I've really got nothing additional to add tonight. I'll say my farewells next week to our council members. Thank you.
Councilmember Pierce.
Just a couple of things. I want to welcome Carol to the Parks and Rec Board. She's a neighbor and a friend, and I'm excited about her being on the board. The dog registration and vaccination went very well on Saturday, and I think social distancing should be continued even next year, because keeping the owners and critters away from each other seemed to be a really good thing. Fred and Valerie, it's a pleasure, and I'll say this again next week. And Fred, I just want to reach out to you particularly because in the last month or so, you shared some things with me. I had no idea we had the commonalities until towards the end of your leaving us, and it makes me even appreciate you more. And then finally, I would like to continue to commend our first responders, our police department and our fire department. Through this pandemic, they have showed amazing grace, and they've really led the way, and particularly with everything that's going on in Kansas City. I myself have noticed a little bit more of an increased patrol. It's been really kind of under the radar, but I do see it. I notice it. I know that you're keeping track of what's going on and that you continue to protect us. And you do that without sending us into a state of emergency that I frankly don't think North Kansas City needs to be in the midst of right now. So more than ever, I really do appreciate our first responders, and thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, like Rita just said, to our police and fire and the chiefs. The leadership you give sets the tone, sets the culture, and that's really, really important right now. So thanks for what you do. That's all for me.
Well, I have several comments tonight. First of all, thank you for the comments from the council members. I really appreciate that. I've felt very, I thought Fred Steffen said it well when he said it sounds trite, but really I have felt very honored to serve and to serve with this council. I feel like we've had a very functional council for the most part over those 6 years, and I have agreed and disagreed with every single member of the council at any point and at various points in time. So I appreciate you all being willing to serve. So, you know, I haven't been here for 42 years. I've been here for 6. And when I went on the council, it was a very different time. We used to meet in person, like we in a room. I don't know if you all remember that, but that's what it looked like. And we had a big issue that actually got me on the council was the hospital potential sale of the hospital. And then we've just dealt with issues after issues, you know, since that time. So it's been a journey. Mike Smith was our acting city administrator. My neighborhood wasn't even completely developed. I don't think I even heard of a guy named Jesse Smith when I was on the council, when I got on the council. So it seems so long ago, and it was only 6 years. So a lot can happen during that time. But I feel like I've met some really great people through the process, not just, you know, on the council, but also in my neighborhood and in the city. And working with the mayor has been great. I've only served under one mayor. So Mayor, you've been my only example of a mayor, but you've done great and I've appreciated working with you. So I think we're really lucky in this town. And I think the staff, frankly, in North Kansas City is amazing. You know, being a leader in other parts of my life, I have to say that I would be very honored for any of them to work for me. So I think they really are great and they know their stuff and they're willing to learn, and I appreciate that. So I would say, you know, just for me, a special thank you to Lisa Toll and to Ron Knight for running for my council seat. I appreciate both of them and their willingness to serve our community, and also thank you to Carol and Randall for their willingness to serve on boards. And I think just a special thank you for all who are running for office, especially at the local level, because right now, it's a crazy world, and some of it is in our own, you know, making, and some of it is not. And I think we need leaders to be calm and capable and helping us through a chaotic life right now. So instead of fanning the flames, I'd like to see leaders do more fighting the fires and calming people down. So if you're out there and want to do something, support your local politicians, find something to believe in, find something to support, and just take up your sword and fight the good fight and try to help the world be a better place. And at the end of the day, be kind. And there's the one thing I can say, just try to be kind. And that's all I have to say tonight. And Eric, I have to ask you, our water seems to taste better. I don't know why our water tastes better. I've hated it for 14 years. And all of a sudden now it tastes better. So maybe you can tell me why that happened. And also Pat Hoover, I'd like to thank you for the work that you've done on the alleys. The alley behind 30th Avenue looks amazing. And you personally didn't do it, but you know what I mean? You coordinated it. And I look forward to more alley work in the future. And that's it for me.
Ma'am, I have no idea why the water tastes better, but I'm glad you like it.
It tastes so much better.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Okay, well, thank you. A couple of things tonight. First of all, I want to welcome and thank our new board members that are coming on. Welcome them. I also want to echo the comments about Valerie and Fred. You know, Valerie, you've always been a steadfast voice and a steady voice on the council. So really appreciated working with you. Also with Fred, working with you, Fred. I mean, being a police officer in the city and serving the city for so many years. So love to thank you for your service and wish you both well. And maybe we'll see you on a board or commission if you want to get on one of those to continue the legacy. Also wanted to thank the voters that came out and voted today too. So there were several of us sitting out there in the heat getting a tan, but wanted to thank you all for coming out there. I want to thank the Clay County EDC also for their work that they're going to be doing with us on the grant program for the small businesses. I think that's so important. And like Valerie said, the municipal level elections, those are the ones that really are closest to you. One thing that I did notice out there at the YMCA today is that several areas of the sidewalk, the concrete's pretty bad. Have we ever looked at have a plan maybe in the future to do some concrete work out there at the Y, or maybe have somebody take a look at it?
we can take a look at it. We have not had a discussion with the Y about that. I do know that there are some areas of the parking lot that we had talked about having rehabilitated, but
There's
we'll
some on
take a
the
look at the
sidewalk,
concrete.
like on the west side and coming up on the main entrance. So
We'll take a look.
that's all I've got. Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Mayor Stila.
Well, everything I think has been said. So I've moved to adjourn.
Second.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
The mayor.
Can you do that?
I'll make the motion. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce. Councilmember Pierce, you're muted and I'm
Sorry, yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes, ma'am.